We do not have to remember the points of the science. They remember us. When we did the Course in Miracles, you know, I always said, yeah, the Course is working me. All right. So Brooke requested that we do the treatment for whoever we have in mind. She has someone in particular in mind. And this is whoever you have in mind, not someone who is necessarily in any dire or whatever. So are you open to doing that? And then before we start, the attachment piece, okay, which is the 4th paragraph down there. And it's also the very top. I'm on 111. Apparent lust, greed, and attachment to material objects. Apparent lust, greed, or attachment to material objects. Do you want to use that phrase, or do you want to say something else? Yes?
There was fear.
Right.
And
ignorance was the other one.
Mm-hmm. That's what we did last time. Fear and ignorance. Fear, ignorance, or attachment. Do you want to do that?
Instead of lust or greed.
Right. That's up to you. But I thought it would help if we all said the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of 5 different things.
So what is it? Fear?
Fear, ignorance, or attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is down in the 4th paragraph down below. Fear, ignorance. And they're all related, right? Greed is a function of fear, and lust is a function of ignorance. If I can't lust after anything I know that I already have.
So it would be the collective belief has not touched you.
The same thing.
with
Right, the next
fear,
paragraph.
ignorance.
Right, everywhere it says lust or greed. And I think that's the last one where it says that. Yeah. So this is a long treatment, but it covers the bases. All right. So take a deep breath and recognize this truth of your being that we're going to read at the very top, and then think about the person. So let's do this together at the top. I, as spirit, do not accuse my world or myself of fear, ignorance, or attachment to material objects. All that I see and experience everywhere I look is good. So breathe that in. And then anyone who comes to mind, speak the name internally. Speak it again internally. Feel the connection. All right. You are a spirit. Therefore, you are not afflicted with any kind of disease or distress. I see you in spirit as the health that you are. The spirit knows nothing of imperfection. The spirit shines through all your being with its clear, holy light. From first to last, in your real life, no error has fastened upon you. Therefore, there is no disease or imperfection in you. Nothing can spoil universal health. You were not born of flesh, according to the law of flesh, but of spirit, according to the law of spirit. Any apparent fear, ignorance, and attachment to material objects of the generations before you cannot have descended upon you in disease. God, the good that is in everything, is your father and mother. You cannot have inherited disease. The collective belief has not touched you with thoughts of fear, ignorance, or attachment. Therefore, disease does not touch you. God, the good, enfolds you completely. People with whom you are associated do not burden you with their thoughts and beliefs of the senses. You are not subject to the thoughts or feelings of others. Therefore, you cannot have disease in your mind. Your own thoughts of things of matter or about attachments or appetites have no power in them to give you disease. You are in the Spirit, free from your own passions and appetites. Therefore you are cleansed by spiritual thoughts now and are well. My own thoughts and beliefs do not burden you. You are free of any error that appears in me. You are free in the Spirit. You are free from all thoughts of disease. God, your good is your life. You cannot be threatened with death of any part of your life, nor can you fear death, nor yield to death of any part of your life forever. God is your health, omnipresent. You cannot be threatened with disease in any part of your health, nor fear disease, nor yield to disease in any part of your body forever. God is your strength, omnipotent. You cannot be threatened with weakness, nor fear weakness, nor yield to weakness in your strength forever. God is your substance, the essence of your being. Therefore, health is God in every part of your body. You are clearly and Holy Spirit. I see you as wisdom, looking toward me to speak of your heavenly wholeness and peace. I see you as peace, facing me as peace that the world cannot take away. I see the child of God that you are, well, whole, wise, and peaceful, here, now, and always. In this moment, you are ready to acknowledge to all and to yourself that you are healed. You are in harmony with your life in every way. And I now realize that you are healed. I praise you for your life in the Spirit. I praise you for your strength in the Spirit. I praise you for your perfect manifestation of God now. For as God is, you are, always and everywhere. Amen. So it is. Yeah? That's the essence of Lesson 7. We have reviewed it. Moving on to Lesson 8. Lesson 8 parallels Lesson 2. Lesson 7 parallels Lesson 1. So Monday is about knowing the truth, recognize the omnipresence of the aspects of the divine in us, through us, and around us, right? In Lesson 2, we said, oh no, any other thoughts but that cannot be true. Cannot be true. So, truth in Lesson 8 is rending the veil. Now, rending the veil is referring to the veil in front of the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem, which was it was really like a carpet, okay? And when Jesus was crucified, the story is that veil of the temple was rent from the top down during the earthquake that followed his last exhalation. All right, so there was an eclipse and an earthquake while he was dying on the cross. And that was why it all had to happen in a very big hurry, because it had it all timed and all of that. So it was. And so that earthquake rent the veil in the temple from the top down, which means something significant was happening in that Holy of Holies, right? So rending the veil, that which was hidden and that which was God's place of being was now visible to all. Okay? There is now no separation between us and divinity. Right? And the temple has never been rebuilt since that version of the temple was destroyed in the 30 or 40 years after Jesus was on the planet. So, yeah, it's an interesting state of being. So the 8th lesson is, be not deceived. These are the words of Jesus. Spirit never deceives. Matter is the only deceiver. It makes up all appearances. So all of this is appearances. If I can perceive it, it isn't real. Right? It's just an appearance. I have been projecting it, or I'm only perceiving what my mental framework allows me to perceive. Okay? The next paragraph tells us about Job. Does everyone know Job's story? All right, so we don't have to, and you don't know Job's story. Okay, so the story of Job is, there was this, it's an Old Testament story, the very prominent, well-to-do man who followed all the laws, did everything right. And the story is that the devil approaches God, and God gives the devil permission to destroy Job's life. Now, that's obviously all metaphor and not happening. But, so, everyone dies, the whole farm goes to pieces, everything burns down, and he's sitting in a pile of ashes, and he's covered in boils. And the neighbors come along and they say, boy, you must have really blown it for God to do this to you. He said, I didn't do anything, I'm not evil, right? And he proceeded to defend his position for a while. And the neighbors keep telling him, well, what did you keep looking, what did you do, what did you do? And finally, Job turns to God and he says, you know I am not wicked. Your hands fashioned me. You know who and what I am. And in that moment, there's a thunderclap, and the voice in the clouds comes out and says, and where were you when I put the stars in the sky? Where were you when I put the mountains on the plain? Who are you to tell me what to do? Right? But what happens is Job establishes a real relationship with divinity in that moment. And in that moment, everything begins to be restored. And he ends up with far more than he had before. Okay, so that's the basic story of Job. From a thought perspective, what we're looking at is, devil is always our own enemy, our fears, okay? And one of his lines is, that which I most greatly feared has come upon me. And I'm really conscious of that. That which we put our energy into is what we experience, and what we most greatly fear. This is what he most great. So it's not that the devil did this. Right. His own fears did this, right? And if you listen to the Joyce Meyerses of the world, you will hear that what she calls the enemy is not someone out there. It is that part of our mind that pulls us away from what we know to be true, with whatever means it uses, okay? And the angel in one shoulder and the devil in the other, they're both in our mind. Right? So Job is restored more and more fully, and the neighbors are just, what was that all about? But obviously, the recorders of the story understood what that was about and wanted everyone to know that. So even if everything that you ever most feared is happening to you, if you connect, if you turn toward divinity, you get divinity. Because that's all it takes, is turning toward it. That's all we have to do, is just say, okay, I'm ready. I really am. I connect, that connection is all that's needed. So that's what that whole thing is. But she goes on to say, their neighbors, his friends, described one kind of God, but he knew another. Their kind was full of punishment, okay, for a character, the character they thought Job must be. Job insisted he was not their character, and they must have imagined. He permitted himself to experience only the presence. He didn't allow what they were saying to influence him. He allowed himself only to connect with the divine. So that's what that's all about. Thus it is within all of us. Thus it is with all of us. We look at others in the red or green or blue tints of our own ideas, our own mental framework, right? And we see them as entirely different from what they in reality are. And over and over and over again, we do this, okay? So what we describe as their character, since it's not the truth about them, must be in our own mind in some way. Right. This is why the righteous are strangely afflicted. This is another line I often use. The righteous, the people are doing everything right, are strangely afflicted. They are, they have problems, they have challenges. What happened? Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, because they're strutting around their goodness and judging others, and so they're getting it back on them. is really what that's about, unfortunately.
Or was it something, how you said Emerson believed that good people must, be challenged or burdened, and he was.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the next piece, right?
Yeah.
So what we need to realize is, thought is always the cause. Matter is never the cause. Our own thought, as we align it with other people's thoughts, may be what's going on here, or our own thought as we have developed it in our own self. Okay? It's always from that. All right.
Quick question.
Yes.
We talk about appearances.
Yes.
Okay. In reality, it's only the good,
Right.
right? Yes, and God, whichever. But there are appearances.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Help me with, what is it that moves us from this thing with God or God of the good and slips into appearances?
Marvelous. There's a wonderful story. What does is our culture, okay, our parenting, etc. And one of my favorite stories is the 3 or 4-year-old older brother who asked for time alone with the baby sister, and the parents are really worried, and finally they put in a baby monitor so that they can make sure it's all okay, because they've been told about sibling rivalry, right? And so the little boy wonders, and he goes in and he says, okay, tell me what it was like. I'm beginning to forget.
Oh.
Yeah. We're born in that pure state.
Okay.
Then someone withholds a meal. Someone else, drops us or something. We begin to have these other kinds of experiences, and then we make decisions. Oh, this is what the world is like, and this is what I have to be to deal with it. And so we go further and further and further from the being that we were born to be.
Okay, so initially, we were at one with the good.
Mm-hmm.
Having come into this experience, flesh and blood, we, as a result of the influences of flesh and blood, we move away from it.
Into the material
Into the
laws.
murder. If I had no idea of this concept, how would I know that?
Some people get it intuitively. They are alone enough or quiet enough or connected with the universe enough that they feel that and they realize that. Some people get it working with kids, with infants. They see the purity of that infant and they realize, 5 years later, that purity has been messed up. I've never met a kid under 8 who wasn't brilliant in his own perfect, wonderful way. But somewhere between 8 and 12, they get convinced they're not, right? So
I'll
that,
talk to you later.
okay,
Thank you.
but that's the direction. So we are trained by the culture to see only certain things, to project only certain things onto the world around us. And one of the ways to think about it is the world is like the green screen that they use to make effects in the movie, okay? And one of my favorite scenes is the making of Men in Black, and Will Smith is on a ladder and he's wrestling in a green screen. And in the movie, there's a giant cockroach. So this is great improv. He's got nothing there, and he's standing on a ladder.
Wow.
Right? But he had to make it up sufficiently in his head for the graphics people to be able to generate this huge beast that he's wrestling with. Right? And that's what we're doing all the time. We're projecting onto the purity of reality what we individually and collectively have decided the world has to be for this story to play out. The story of our lives, our culture, our time in history. Make sense? Oh, good. So, be not deceived, near the second to last, about either man or God, for man and God in truth are good. Okay? And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, whoever undiluted knows me as Supreme Spirit worships me in all forms. Hi, God. Hi, God. All of this is God. Out there is God. You are all, all forms. And that's part of what Mother Teresa was trying to tell us. All of those bodies in the street that people were avoiding were God. Yeah, so treat them like that. Treat them in the same way you would. All right? So, thus, each of us is spirit. If all being is spirit, then I am spirit. And if spirit cannot be in poverty or debt or ill, I cannot be in poverty or debt. If spirit cannot be burdened, I cannot be burdened. If spirit cannot be sick, I cannot be sick. And when I was just starting in this process and I didn't know where my next $50 was coming from, this was very important to me. Right. Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
Have a good drive.
Thank you.
So, to know this, that I can't be burdened, I can't be in poverty or debt, spirit, which is who and what I am, would never have those experiences. So why am I allowing myself to have those experiences? Why would I do that? Right?
Why did Jesus do that?
He didn't. He was never in poverty. He was never in debt. He was never sick. He was never burdened. And the Gnostics tell us he never felt a thing on the cross.
So the story that we see, the story that we're told of suffering and people hating him and the crown of thorns, none of that really happened, or it happened for a purpose greater than we all know, so that he could teach us that
Right.
to overcome it, that it didn't affect him. It happened just like bad things happen. We have neighbors that, are crazy, or we have children that die, but
The story is happening around us.
Right.
We can buy into it or not. Jesus never bought into it, and so was unaffected by it. The crucifix did not exist until after the Inquisition was formed. They were put up in the 1200s.
Oh, wow.
There were no crucifixes in the churches built prior to 1200.
Wow.
Not one.
Wow. Interesting.
Okay, there might be in a Station of the Cross a picture of Jesus on the cross, but often it was a stylized, victorious picture, often not of the crucifix type of thing. So it's a church doctrine to focus on the suffering of Jesus. The Orthodox focus on the resurrection. They don't focus on the crucifixion. And I remember I had a Catholic that I was renting a room from who was raised by Catholic nuns, and she was just, all the time in crucifixion. I said, what would happen if you focused on the resurrection? It was life transforming. Yeah, to make that shift from how the suffering and all of that to, oh my goodness, whole new life. You've been through it, now you get a whole new life. Wow. Yeah, whole different way. So, she's helping us make that shift.
Well, they had to focus on the crucifixion to maintain the separation they tried to create for the need for their job.
The justification.
Yes.
Also the guilt, he died for our sins.
Right,
My
exactly.
goodness.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that ought to show you how bad you are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it took this much for God himself to
Yeah.
get, and that's not quite how Paul wrote it, but that is Paul's, a version of Paul's story. All right. So, I'm not going to be deceived in the last sentence. I cannot be sick. All these conditions are nothing to spirit, and so are nothing to me. I am not deceived by any of them. They are appearances, they are not real. Okay? In my own life or that of those around me. This is the only understanding that works practically, bringing external forms into new combinations. We worship spirit in all its forms, and we let the forms alone. Okay, so, in this way of thinking and being in the world and getting things done in the world, we don't focus on, I've got a problem here, I got to fix it. We focus on, spirit, yes, that's who I am. Oh, that's who you are. Of course, we're fine. Right? Whole different way of thinking.
And I like that phrase, they change themselves by
Exactly.
our recognition.
Exactly. We don't try to
Yeah.
change them. They change themselves by our recognition of spirit. So I had some really clear experiences over the last week or so of that also, where what looked like were going to be a little iffy situations, I would do the treatments beforehand, and everything that was anticipatable based on history didn't happen. It was wonderful. So, next paragraph. We have no inclination to condemn others for not doing what we see as a need. If we were to hate tobacco or hate rum or hate any man or woman, we would put a dark screen between ourselves and the sight of good health in the patient we're trying to cure. So it's not about hating this person, it's about hating someone else. So if I'm upset with a political figure, it's burdening me. It's preventing me from allowing the light to flow through me. If I'm upset with anybody, if I am laying blame on anyone or anything as not okay, then it's creating a problem. In the middle of that paragraph, if someone has a mournful disposition, it's because they believe the divine has disappointed them in some way. Yeah, I don't believe in God in any way. I'm mad at him. Right? Yeah, that's what we generally do, right? If they're upset and unhappy, it's because they believe God has let them down. And I understand that because we have been taught how to pray as if Jesus never taught us how to pray. Remember? Get down on your knees and ask God. Where does Jesus say that?
In Sunday school?
Never. Yeah, never. You know, oh, beloved supplanter of everything that we are, give us our daily bread. Forgive us. It's commandments. It's a statement, right? Lesson 4. It's never, oh, please, would you take care of this? Yeah. That's not. So, of course, we're not getting what we're looking for because we've been taught how to look for it in ways that don't necessarily work.
Interestingly, the breakthrough moment for my daughter to come into appreciating, understanding, and following New Thought was to get blistering angry at God and pound the bed, throw the pillows, scream, rant, rave, and carry on till she literally burned the anger out of her. And that night she had a dream of sitting at the foot of Jesus, and he told her why. Woof! That she had to go through all of this, and that was all done and over with. And it was like within a few days, we were getting phone calls about what she was reading and what she was thinking and what she was feeling. And but she had to get that angry at him first.
And you had to do the work you were doing in order for her to open enough so that she could do that, because she had that all walled off in a partition over here. She wasn't going there, right? And that's one of the things that, you know, I encourage full expression of your emotions around an issue as part of releasing, because if it's walled off and over there, it's still in you, right? But if you can fully express it and then release everything you've just expressed, and that's what she did, right? And then there's room for divinity to come in and say, see, it's fine. Yeah, that was hard. You made it through. You don't have to do that again. And that's like Job. When he finally got, please, I don't understand. Yeah. And then there's that, oh, and then it's done. And that connection, yeah. Well done. Thank you. That's a beautiful story. All right. So the next paragraph, if I thought that doctors of medicine were in great error because they think that drugs and procedures are necessary for healing, I'd be stopping some energy of the Spirit from flowing freely through me. All right. I need to remember that whether someone thinks healing occurs through drugs or through words, the healing power is moving through whoever has confidence that omnipotent good is omnipresent health. I don't care whether they got a degree after their name or not, right? It's whoever knows this to be true. That's the confident doctor who would go in and say, you know, you're a lot better off than you think you are, right? You're going to be getting up and feeling fine. That kind of thing. Truth, that is God, the good, must, by universal law, stand in the place of appearances. And as we learn truth, we are masters of the law. We can use the law and apply it at will with guaranteed effectiveness. That's what mastery is, right? If I do this, it's going to come out fine just because I've mastered it. Right? All right. As you see that truth can't be imaginings or appearances, you come to realize you don't have to make your truth work. You simply know it. You know the truth that makes you free. You speak it, and it is its own working principle. Okay? The only power, the greatest power, is knowing you don't need to do anything. Don't be deceived by your imaginations. Live by principle. Now, what does that mean? If something comes up, I can choose what I'm, to focus on that, or I can choose principle. What am I going to do? If I choose principle, I'm basically doing a treatment, right? I'm saying God is the only reality here. Good is the only possibility here. Love is the only thing that can happen here. I'm choosing that principle instead of the appearance.
So all the statements that you just made, is that the reason it out? Is that what she's meaning by saying reason it out?
Almost. So let's say I pick one of the premises is that we get what we focus on. Okay, that is a premise in the study, right? Okay, how is it that I'm going to get what I focus on? Well, let's see. If I am focusing on this over here, then that means I'm reinforcing a mental state, and I'm reinforcing, a mental framework, and I'm projecting that, and I'm accepting that as what is real, and then the body is aligning itself, so I work all through that, and and then I go, but, if that's good for me, that's wonderful, all those things that just happened. But if that's not good, if that's not helpful, if that's angering and upsetting, then all of the things I just did are not things I want to do. So of course it's going to, so you work through.
Okay.
Does that help?
And is premise and principle?
No. Premise is any statement made in here, okay? So any statement at all, we have no inclination to condemn others. Okay, that's a statement. That's a premise. The principle is good is omnipresent. The principle is truth is the only working power. The principle is love is the reality of every being. Health is the reality of every being. Okay, those are the principles. Do you hear the difference between a premise and a principle?
Yep.
Okay. So you can go either way, but you're choosing the principle and you're reasoning out the premises. And sometimes you have to reason out the principle in order to choose it, right? And especially at the beginning, in lesson, when we're first hearing it. What do you mean health is the only reality? We got a hospital over here. You spent 30 years doing that,
Yeah, I'm done with that.
I'm so glad. That was quite a dream you had, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was. Yes. I dreamed it long and hard.
And now you're having another dream, which is a much more pleasant dream.
So much happier.
And as you get more and more in touch with the truth, it's even happier and more pleasant. And you've been experiencing that too.
Yes.
And it's been beautiful to watch, right? And that's what we all get to have as we do this work. Thank you so much.
Yay.
All right.
It's only been 5 years. But
Hey,
who's counting?
yeah, but look at how many years before.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a tenth of the time.
Bingo.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so don't be deceived. The next section, lights in the firmament. The 8th lesson is about light. It's about freedom. On the material plane, light is the freest process of nature, isn't it? I'm at the bottom of that 118 page. So you cannot bottle it up. Isn't that cool? You can't bottle up light. I have this great image that someone painted. It's an older couple, and they're out in a lightning storm with mason jars collecting lightning. It's wonderful. All right. And if you hide a flame under a bushel, it burns the bushel. It makes an even greater light. Okay, you may hide behind it, but you cannot quench it. Okay, so recognize that light. That's a pretty powerful thing. It can't go away. And we know more and more. Do you know the cells in your body are sending out laser light beams? in between other cells. There are lasers in our cells. That is so cool. You know, and some of it gets out of our body. There's biophotons, and they're, you know, developed equipment where they can measure and take photographs of the photons that are emitted by the body, by the human body, and by plants, and it's very cool.
Is
Like
that one where, you know, they take a photo
Kirlian?
of you? Yes, yes, yes.
Kirlian is apparently related to it, but Kirlian's actually picking up just the next lower down on the electromagnetic scale than
Okay.
visible light.
Okay.
All right, so, the next, second paragraph on that page, humanity yearns for a country and a comradeship that cannot be found except by looking toward the eternal, enduring universe, the one song, the reality of which our material world is but a shadow. Okay, so the physical universe is a shadow of the real universe. And in the book of Revelation, when he says, the old heaven and earth shall pass away, and a new heaven and a new earth shall come into being, the new, it's lit by an undying light. You know, it's not the sun going up and down anymore. It's this internal, eternal light, which is the light of love and whatever. So the third paragraph, Moses said, let there be lights in the firmament. The soft starlit night is a symbol for the rest that the mind takes at certain stages along the way. Isn't that nice? As the Sabbath time when we speak, nothing, think nothing, and do nothing. We've spoken truth, and it does its own work. All right, bottom of the page. Keep the eye single to one free, self-existent God, and you can't help but believe in free grace. That is a premise. If I'm keeping the eye single, I must believe in free grace, right? So if that doesn't make sense, reason it out. Persistence of vision is a scientific term. It's called one-pointedness by the Hindu Brahmins, and the ancient Zoroastrians taught that wherever the eye of divinity is focused, all other senses follow. Have you ever noticed how often in Egyptian art there is the eye, right? Right. And it isn't that God is watching you. It's a reminder to keep your eye single. It's only one eye.
And it's on all our money.
A good point. All right.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's another example. She's talking about the Persians in India, the Parsis of India. And when I was in India, my first night was dinner with a group of Parsi professional women, which was very interesting. We had wine with dinner. It's the only time we had wine the whole time. So discovered that watching things that spoil, right, spoil and die, affected them with spoiling matter. But frequent uplifting of the inward vision freed them from such spoiling. All right, and one of the things that you had commented on when you started using the words on the fridge was your stuff lasted longer in the fridge. Yeah, that was fun. They were using the words from the water container. We had done water blessings, and every month.
Every day. I mean, every week.
Every week you'd put the word then on the fridge.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what the side of the fridge looked like. But all these great words and the stuff inside stopped spoiling as fast. I love that. That was a beautiful story. Thank you.
A head of lettuce lasted a month and was still crisp.
Wow.
As it should be. Thank you so very much. Okay. Then the next paragraph. But our vision of the risen Christ-empowered Jesus. Okay. Jesus, who's entered into that Christ mind, with its glorious healing light, works quickly indeed. So it's high time we set our inner gaze upon that holy light. All right? And so she talks some other cultures as we go through that. And the reasonings, second to last, the reasonings of metaphysical science are the works of spirit. They are the works of truth. Truth is in us. Let it shine. Truth performs great tasks. Let it shine as miracles of well-being, cheering and enlightening the nations. All right? So as we don't have to be out there proclaiming it, we just have to be it and know it and feel it. And then it shines through us in what we say and what we do. Yeah. And in how we radiate into the world beyond us. All right. So 121, signs of the Spirit. So she talks about the sign of the cross in ancient times. You go Not here. No way. Not happening.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
Okay? Now, the Etruscans did it slightly differently. An older man in a white robe with a conical hat and a shepherd's crook would stand on the hill, which is the tallest hill in Rome today, and he would say, from heaven to earth and from sea to sea, all is well. All right? We call him the Pope.
Okay, that's a change.
But that's basically what he's saying, you know, all is well. I'm blessing you. I'm naming all is well, right? So things have changed over time, but the same principle is being, you know, that's the Palatine Hill. Vatican has, you know, moved to the Palatine. Yeah, anyway. So it's been interesting to watch that process. As we accept that there are certain ways of being in the world that just work, right? They work no matter what we call them. It doesn't matter what the words are, right? It's the power that is flowing through us. If you find syllables that have power, use them. You know, the person we call Jesus Christ never heard those syllables. Nobody spoke like that. There was no way he could ever have heard those syllables. He heard Yeshua, or Yezu, or Yisa. Those were his name, okay, depending on which language. And he heard perhaps Al-Machach, or Al-Masach, as the Messiah. Probably not. He would probably have always heard Yeshua ben Yosef, Yezu ben Yosef, Isa ben Issa. That would have been his name as he knew it. So obviously he's not saying anything about his name, is he? So Shem, name in Hebrew and Aramaic, means nature, character, quality. Enter into the state of being that I am, and all these things will happen. In my nature, in my quality, in my mind, in my characteristics. Enter into that state of being, and whatever you ask for, you get. Whatever you say, it will be bound. Whatever you bind in heaven and earth will be bound in heaven and earth in that state of being. Okay. Excellent. So, the cross is a sign of undoing the past by seeing and hearing the new from heaven to earth and across the land. All right?
Where are you?
I'm still on 121. I'm just reading
okay.
what I just talked about. Now I'm going to jump down to those who think truth will be immaculately neat in dress and person, but it will be the natural, unpremeditated movement of that immaculate spirit that is the focus of their thoughts. Okay, they're not going to be OCD. They're just going to show up in perfect shape all the time, right? The man who wrote the book that Ernest Holmes grew up on was this remarkable being who taught natural history and was a Moody Bible evangelist in Scotland. And he worked with the workmen down in the docks. And that was it. So he would teach natural history and natural science, geology, biology in the college during the week, and on the weekends he'd go down to the docks. And he started writing, and people began to pick up on his stuff, and so he started getting invited to the Duke's homes or one of the palaces or whatever to share. And he was always the same everywhere he went, right? This is the guy who wrote the One Law book, Henry Drummond, that I work with. The book that Ernest Holmes grew up was Natural Law in the Spiritual World. And what he came to understand was that just as plants reach down into the soil and convert minerals into livingness, animals consume the plants and convert plants into mobility, and humans consume animals and plants and convert that into intellect and spirituality, and spirit reaches down in humans and animals and plants and converts that into something we know not what. And that's the essence of the book that Ernest Holmes grew up on with the Bible. Okay? So that might be a useful piece. So, but everyone was just amazed. He was equally fine in all those environments. He always looked the same. He always talked the same. But yeah, and everyone was comfortable with him all the time because he was focused on God at work, God at work, God at work, God at work. It didn't matter what he was talking about, whether it was the sciences or Jesus, right? It was all there. He is also the one who wrote the greatest thing, the explanation of 1 Corinthians 13. Little book that used to be given out to everybody when they got married or graduated or something. That was Henry Drummond. All right. So the last paragraph, as we live in the light of reasoning or spirit, we see our words attending to our external circumstances, so we let go of any concern over them. We stop being concerned about the external circumstances. Oh, isn't that interesting? Do my treatment. Focus on the divine. That's all you have to do. All right? She points out at the top of 122, while the Apostle Paul often focused on material things, okay? All right? These subjects are not even in the mind of someone who is spirit-focused, okay? So what we see in Paul is a flawed person. Funny thing about that, he's human, right? And we also see that probably 2 or 3 people wrote under the name Paul. So, because you can see a very marked difference in tone and sentence structure in some of the letters compared to some of the others. But nonetheless, there are the times when it's about the material forms and the times when it's about the spiritual context. And when you can feel that and move with that. Next paragraph, by contrast, as we contemplate truth, the words we speak are the utterance of the spirit of life within us. Okay, and I've shared before, when I'm preparing to get into the pulpit, my job is to make it so spirit is doing the talking. I give it lots of material to work with right at the surface of my mind. That's how I prepare. I know what can be said and what I know about things and everything, and it's all right there. But spirit is the one who's going to put the phrases together. Spirit is the one who's going to choose the order. Spirit is the one who's going to close this thing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And then she points this, and this next paragraph is so important. Some who become spiritually minded lose their taste for certain foods. Seeing this, religious leaders have proclaimed that everyone should have tasted
Of course.
All right. Okay. Again, misstaking effect for cause. Fasting from food has never made people spiritual. For material actions are not the cause of spirit. Yeah, hungry, but not spiritual.
Not spiritual.
Yeah, hungry, right. That's what I was thinking.
Okay. According to the spirit in us, so will our outer actions be. Okay. So to the extent that it's blocked, that was that last paragraph before forms are nothing. Before the section forms are nothing. So when we recognize that spirit is alive in us and who and what we are is just the embodiment of spirit in this environment, wow, then that power, that presence, that love, that light is expressed through us. We use words like that treatment we read to get to the point where we could feel and be that. And at some point that power moved through us, and it might have been only for 1/10 of a second while we were reading all of that, or it might have been for all of it. It doesn't matter because it got through. Right? And so we use the words to get to the place where we know that we are spirit and the power of spirit is working in and through and as us. Yeah, whatever you want to call spirit, God, the waiting absolute, whatever works for you. Thank you. Next section, forms are nothing, light is all. It's the goal of this 8th lesson to convince humanity to erase all fictitious estimates of the reality around us. To love is to see God in all. This light, this love, puts out any appearance of evil as a lamp dispels darkness.
I'm going to have to practice. Look at the TV. Political fit.
This is why I recommend media fasts.
Media that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I know people are down to 1 day a week and others who never do. But yeah, just what would happen if you only spent 1 hour every few days or only spent 1 hour every week paying attention to the news? Yeah,
You wouldn't miss much.
No, it is amazing to me how much repetition there is.
But it's amazing how much better I feel when I don't,
Yeah.
when I don't watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I see it as, oh, this is I can see it. I could go, okay, this is just entertainment, this is drama, this is a movie, but it's a pretty harsh movie.
Yes, it is.
So it can still kind of seep in.
Yes.
But not watching it really changes my
Right.
mood.
And I don't watch
consciousness.
harsh movies either.
Yeah, right. I don't either anymore.
Yeah.
So
I'm
so,
almost
you
to
know.
the point where I can't even watch the Hallmark, romance. It's really sad.
So what happens when you encounter people, at the post office and the grocery line and this kind of thing, and they are so much into this, that's all they want to talk about.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be offensive to them, you want spirit to love them and stuff.
I
Okay.
just say it quietly. I do that. Ernest Holmes, not true.
Yeah.
Inside.
Yeah,
You know,
I
that-
Cancel this, cancel this.
Yeah.
I'm just finding it's not effective.
Okay, so that, there's something in you that's calling people like that into your world. So there's some thought process about the world out there still cares about that, and I'm pretending not to, or I no longer do. So what would happen if you could erase that thought? That the people in my world think that's so important. Because one of the things I'm seeing is fewer and fewer people in my world think that's so important.
Yeah.
Right? It is amazing.
It's not happening very often, but occasionally it's like I feel surrounded because I'm not talking with this person, but this person's talking with that one, and that's what they're talking about.
Oh, marvelous. So can you hear? It's not here. It's not in her immediate family. It's in the next circle out. Excellent.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, continue to treat.
Okay.
And then you'll be hearing stories like this, right? Someone telling you that they've experienced that. So you read it again, and you get, none of us are dependent on that. We all have access to truth, and we all know exactly what we need to know simply by choosing the light and the love in our own world. We know exactly what we need to know. The world will make sure of it. God will make sure of it, that what we need to know, we know. And it may simply be we happen to walk past the TV screen right when an announcement is being made. That's happened to me more times than once, right? I've actually seen when the announcement was happening. Like, I saw when the white smoke came up for the current pope. Yeah, I happened to be going past a TV when that decision was announced. It's like, wow, that's an historical moment, and I was part of it, right? And that, I have that kind of event a lot, and it's like, this is cool. I don't need to be tracking this stuff. The universe makes sure I get to experience exactly what I need to experience for me to be who and what I'm meant to be in the world. Does that make sense?
Yes. I have a question,
Okay.
and it's somewhat on this. So the people around me in California and here are always about earthquake, and I hear tsunami, get your pack, ready. I have no interest in that.
Good for you, I don't either.
Stockpile the food, I mean, my friend says, whenever I joke with her about her cabinets are just stuffed, she goes, yeah, but you'll be at my house when the tsunami comes, and I'm like, all right, but I don't have that attachment.
I have to share this
Yeah.
because I lived in Hood River. I was born in Hood River, and then I lived there until I was 18. I went back and I lived there for 30 years after my parents passed away. When I told them I was retiring to the Oregon coast, practically everybody said, aren't you afraid of tsunamis? I said, my God, I've been living at the base of an active volcano. Why in the world would I fear a tsunami?
A few hundred feet from one of the largest dams in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yes, definitely.
So that's part of it. When back in the 90s, there were those earth changes things, and everyone was getting real upset. Oh my goodness, the world's coming to an end. And so someone asked me to do a class about the reality of that. And so I was walking through and the dates and the geology and all of that. And then I said, if we honestly believe what it is that we practice and teach, then can we not trust that where we will be at any given moment is exactly the right place for us to be, right?
Yeah.
I actually wrote a short story. I didn't try to publish it, but it was about a school that someone had given them the wherewithal to go for a picnic up in a park up on a hill above the town. And so the whole school, all the kids and the teachers and about a third of the parents are up having this fabulous picnic on the hill when the dam breaks and the town is inundated.
Wow.
But virtually everyone is on this hill,
Wow.
right? And that's the kind of thing that I know is going to happen for all the people. So the tsunamis that hit Indonesia, the tsunami that hit Japan, each one of those things could have killed a lot more
Oh, yeah.
and didn't. Or 9/11.
Yeah.
When I was in the Twin Towers, I was having dinner at the top of the Twin Towers. There was a restaurant up there, and I could feel the plane that was going to come into it. This was 15 years before it actually happened. I could feel it. There were 150,000 people in that building at that time. If you go all the way down through the shopping mall to the subway station, 150,000 people could have been in that building.
Wow.
There were fewer than 50,000 people in that whole complex the day those planes actually hit. That's amazing in itself. 150,000 potential deaths, fewer than 50,000 in the building, and fewer than 3,000 deaths.
Yeah, and Giuliano ordered almost 7,000 body bags in
Right, they couldn't
preparation
use
for
them.
that, and they didn't use them.
Right. So there's just, we are exactly where we need to be to fulfill our life purpose. And we can just relax, okay? I was in this conference that's just winding up right now over here this last couple of days, and the Native Americans hosted it and played a significant role. And one of the conversations was, we have generations of stories about making sure your rope is long enough to tie yourself to the highest tree when the great wave comes.
Interesting.
All right? And go about living your life. But they knew, and they know, and that was 400 years ago was the last one. It's as real to them today as it was then, and it's another 600 to 700 years before the next one is due. And people are afraid to live on the coast. And there's another thing that came up, the tsunami line. This building has to be here because you have to move it. So they moved the Wellport Fire Station to the other side of the tsunami line. The inundation zone, guess what? It's now back in the inundation zone.
In fact, it sits adjacent to the field where they burned down the high school because it was in the tsunami zone.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So, the lines are going to change. The issue is going to change. There always is going to be something in this culture to keep people afraid, to keep them in line.
Yeah.
If it's not the Inquisition, it's a tsunami. If it's not a tsunami, it's the immigrants. If it's not, it's part of the culture that is dying that we're moving on from. Okay? And we can move on from it. But thank you. I appreciate bringing up the question. I hope those were appropriate answers.
Yes, thank you, because I wonder sometimes, because really virtually everyone, except my real close inner circle, believes we should prepare and has for a while. And I'm just like,
You are prepared.
yeah.
And the only way that matters.
I don't exactly like that. I don't think like that, is what I tell them, you know, so.
Yeah, and I keep in my car a bag that's full of all the supplies for me to camp on the road for a day or two. Okay? That's because of how much driving I do.
Right, you would do that anyway, just because of the driving factor, sure.
Yeah, so it's not about tsunamis, I
Yeah,
gotta tell you,
yeah.
or earthquakes,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
or any, I lived on the fault zone, the San Andreas Fault. Most of the time I was having babies and raising children. Really? So, all right, now let's move on. I want to read that very last paragraph at the top of 123 before guidelines. How can the ears hear the truth regarding an apparently blind man when the blindness seems real and sad? Okay, you see two things there? You're feeling as well. Okay, only the words of the healing spirit have life and strength. Okay, so if someone is having difficulties, whatever the case is, pick any word there, okay? As soon as I get hooked into it, I have to unhook myself and refocus on God, right? I have to know the truth and not be hooked into it. The people who wandered through the plague hospitals and were helping people and never got the plague, right? Whether it was Spain during the Spanish War, Civil War, weren't they having plague issues then? Yeah. Lots of people went in to help and never got the plague because they didn't buy into that they were living in a way where they would be affected by it. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of the rituals we use in the hospitals are not actually going to prevent anything, but they set it up so that we believe that we're not going to have the stuff, right? I mean, really. And this whole TSA thing in the airports, I laugh every time, I have to say. You know, just really, you really think this is going to stop anything? No, but it's giving everyone that sense, you know, not only to be so afraid of something, but a sense of, okay, now we're safe, it's okay.
Right.
Okay, so that's a huge part of it, to get that place where you know and you feel like you're safe. Yes?
Well, I can just give a really quick example of my own life. I worked with AIDS patients, did massage, and
Yes.
and other massage therapists would actually wear gloves before the good drugs when they were all the, you know, when the sores were happening. And I thought, I checked my hands. Did I have any cuts? No. And I never wore gloves. And they were so touched. And I was just like.
Literally.
But I thought, well, I'm not going to, that's ridiculous to me. I just thought that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
You know, and nothing ever happened. And I never thought it was going to.
Yes.
Ever.
Of
You
course.
know, so, yeah.
Right on. Right, and you know, we all have something like that where we know enough about who and what we are and the situation that whatever the rules are, you know, that applies to everyone else,
Yes.
but it doesn't apply to me. Right? And that, some of that is mastery. That's what mastery is. You know, the apprentice has very special rules. You hold the brush this way, you move it this way, you never go outside this, you know, where the master just kind of goes, okay. And it's done, right? Picasso's sketches were just, right? Right. So that's the direction we're moving in. Yeah? Make sense? Yep. All right. So guidelines for treatment. So lesson 7 was our first treatment. We just read it. It's straight, you know, someone walks in the door and you do something like that. You recognize that the person in front of you could not possibly have what they think they have, whatever that is. They could not possibly be suffering in any way because they're not affected by any of this thought. I'm not affected. I'm not even affecting them. Nobody is affecting them. They are clear, pure, clean spirit. Lesson 7, treatment 1. All right? So ideally, they go home, they feel great. It's done. All right, pay attention. Okay, I'm going to do the second paragraph. A young man was treating a lady against coughing. He was very eager to help her and told her a great many reasons why her cough was not real, but all the time her cough troubled him. All right. She kept on coughing for 6 weeks to his great dismay. Finally, he said the cough was nothing to him and she might cough all she liked. From that day, she never coughed again. All right. The young practitioner had hit on the implication in this 8th lesson. Leave forms alone. They are nothing to us. They're nothing to us. Such an attitude toward the world of matter is the quickest way to get rid of anything appearing to be abnormal, diseased, or ugly, which would feed and grow on our feeling badly about them, okay? They become more as we feel badly about them.
Or feel badly that we haven't helped them.
That's another way.
Applying
Yeah,
it
any
to
feeling
us.
badly. Yeah, well done. Or talking and thinking about them as something that disturbs us. All right? Remember, description is a form of praise. Praise increases the item, whatever. So if you start talking about it, then you are describing it. And it's a difficult line for some folks some of the time, and especially me, because on the one hand, I want to create this teaching situation, or I want to help people see that it's, whatever. And on the other hand, just saying that just messed me up. Right? So in a way, agreeing to teach this stuff is putting yourself in jeopardy. You see that? Being it is all you need to do. All right? So, for what that's worth. All right. The last paragraph. Spirit never mourns over robberies, nor deaths, nor over pain and crying. They are nothing to spirit, and those who suddenly realize that any sort or kind of evil is nothing at all have touched on the second treatment of outer conditions. It is nothing at all. Okay? It's nothing. Okay? It opens the eyes to see purely from a spiritual standpoint. Opens the eyes to see purely from a spiritual standpoint. That which sees evil is not spirit, is not even intelligence. Okay? So, whew.
You need you to back up. You
Yes.
said description is a form of praise, and
Praise increases the substance
Okay.
of whatever is being praised. Okay. All right. Whew. So as we're going into the second time, the next several lines are just simply all the things you don't want to pay any attention to. Then, if your patient, the third paragraph on 124, if your patient comes to you a second time with any appearance of malady, or if your affairs do not correct themselves after a treatment, it's a sign that you've accepted statements of evil against somebody or something, imagining that while they may not seem bad, they are hiding badness. And you remember when I told you why I picked the Emma material up? It was right after Bush Jr. was elected, and I did not trust that administration. And I knew enough about enough things to be quite sure that they're hiding badness. And I had just had 2 offers on a house fall through. And I picked this book up when I was trying to find out what was going on. And now I study Emma. It was amazing to see that actually leap off the page and tell me what I was experiencing and thinking. And so
then you had deceived yourself. Is that
I was saying they were deceiving us,
okay?
which is also a form of deceiving me. Right?
Because you saw that.
Right. If I think anyone is deceiving me, I'm deceived.
Right.
Because they can only be God good.
All right then.
Right.
Got it.
So, yeah. So while they may not seem bad, their hiding badness is that same thing. So, wow, it was amazing. It was like, okay, I got it. Time to learn about this woman. And then was it that evening or the next day I had some students call, we miss seminary, can we study something? And I said, if I got a deal for you. All right, this is deception. If anybody or anything appears good, it is our pleasure to believe it is genuine goodness. The genuine object, the genuine product. All right. Do not allow yourself to believe that any man or woman, child or object hides evil, though it appears good.
Thank you, Hal.
I thought maybe that could get in a little deeper. It's really important. I am totally cured. They come back in that way. I'm totally cured. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Because you know better than to think that anyone or anything is deceiving anyone, or that you are being deceived. Right? I am not deceived by anyone or anything, about anything. And neither are you. And neither is this person. So that's the guidelines in the treatment. So let's look at the treatment, the practice. Tuesday afternoons. Take Tuesday afternoons to blot out all the words of sickness, pain, or death that may appear in your environment. Take Tuesday to erase pain, poverty, and disease from over the free spirit around you.
So that's another form of negating.
You're right. Lesson 8 is lesson 2, applied to the world around us. So we're dissolving, negating, and, eliminating the possibility of anything like these things in our world. Okay? And so I really like the words of lesson 8. Shall we work on this together? Okay, first acknowledging there is nothing like that out there in the world. Around me and before me, in the plain sight of my mind and in my soul, all is perfect power, ready to rise to accomplish the works of God. The words that I speak not of myself, but the omnipotent presence that dwells within me says them. God works through me to will and to do that which is my fulfillment. Amen. Isn't that nice? That's some of my favorites. Okay, so the treatment with lesson 8 is focusing on this deceived thing. Okay? I'm not deceived into thinking you're sick. I'm not deceived into thinking anyone's ever affected you. I'm not deceived into, that's basically, and then you're not deceived. You're not deceived. Nobody in your world has ever deceived you in any way. That's what the lesson 8 treatment is. That means if someone's coming back to you a second time, or there's a business issue like the house offers that fell through for me in those ancient days before when I started this. It's, there is no deception here. I'm not deceiving anyone. No one has ever deceived me. There is no deception here, right? You get to that place with lesson 8, with your second treatment on whatever it is. So the first treatment is absolute clarity about what's real. The second treatment is absolute clarity. I can only see what's real. I'm not being deceived here. Does that make sense? All right. So let's move on to the metaphors. In fact, let's flip back to lesson 7 for the metaphors, since we didn't do that last time. The number 7, this is 114, is the holy number, the number of wholeness. 7 days in a week, 7 candles in a standard menorah, 7 sins, 7 virtues, 7 pillars of wisdom, which is the constellation Pleiades. 7 is the number of creation, 7 days and nights. The power of speech. If God speaks the creation, the book of Revelation says when the 7th angel begins the repetition of the 7th praise, the mystery of God shall be finished. And when he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven. So we're talking, the process is done, bingo. Now we're starting the next phase. Okay, 6 days to creation, 7th is Sabbath. Now we're in that space and we're moving on to the next phase. That's what 7 is about. The stone is a chrysolite, strength of character and purity of vision. The qualities of this golden clear light reflecting stone. Isn't that lovely? Strength of vision. And then Bartholomew. The apostle Bartholomew, she says, stands for imagination. And Bartholomew comes from the Hebrew, Bar, which is son of, Ptolemy, and Ptolemy is a man. So this is actually someone's last name. It's first name, son of somebody. So Yezu ben Yusuf, okay? Jesus, son of Joseph, right? And Bar is another way to say son of. Or the son, and this is another thing. In Hebrew, most of the names also mean something else. So Tolmai, or there aren't any actual vowels in Hebrew. There are little signs that suggest there's a vowel that would go here. So it would be Tulma. Tulma means plowed or furrowed field. Okay? So probably the father was someone whose face was etched with lines. Okay? Yeah. He's called Nathaniel in the Gospel of John. So some scholars believe that he was Nathaniel bar Tomai. That makes sense, okay? God's giving, is what Nathaniel means, the son of the furrowing. He's associated with the chakra, the energy center, located at the genitals, a source of creativity. All right. So one of the stories about Nathaniel is that he worked with Paul. So the peaceable nature of Nathaniel Bartholomew is the true nature of all beings, for peace is omnipresent. To rebuke someone for their apparent behavior is to be blind to the truth of that person, their Christ nature. And the beatitude is, blessed are the peacemakers. So that was in 7, which was the beginning of treating others, and this is 8. 8 is the number of awakened awareness. An infant is circumcised on the 8th day, symbolizing being cut off from stories of pain, disease, poverty, and death. Okay? And that's interesting. There is a phrase missing in there. So I have not ever noticed that before. So after being cut off from the stories, it's to symbolize that you're going to be listening to heavenly speech only. Okay? The risen Jesus came into visible presence after 8 days. Okay? So he's resurrected and people are aware of him, but he shows up in various places on the 8th day. Okay? And Peter, James, and John heard Moses and Elijah after 8 days on the mountain. This is the Transfiguration. Have you ever heard that word? Yeah. Jesus takes these 2 guys up on the mountain. They're up there fasting and praying for 8 days, and then it starts to turn into light, and then Jesus becomes 3 beings, and it looks like they're all talking. And Peter and John are, shall we go get some food so you can feed everybody? It's beautiful. Aeneas kept to his bed for 8 years waiting for the right word which Peter spoke to him. This is in the Acts of the Apostles. Peter is beginning his ministry, and he goes and he is sent to Aeneas, who has been ill. And Aeneas then becomes one of the great disciples and apostles. And with the number 8, true genius and strength have evolved. 8 is a really wonderful number in the Tarot or in any of the numerology things. It's if we've done a cycle of wholeness in 7, 8 is a cycle of opening, an opening where there's multiple levels of this thing, so you end up being getting slightly overlapping interpretations. But 8 is also infinity turned on its side, which is very nice. Okay, the stone is Beryl. Does anyone remember what Beryl looks like? It's one of the more metallic stones. It's very, it shines like it's been coated with chrome.
Like pyrite.
It's kind of like pyrite, yeah. Okay. So this is the foundation stone for the 8th wall of the New Jerusalem. Remember it, New Jerusalem. New place of peace. The color of both land and sea stands for the written record. Those who have touched the beryl stone are those who hear the word of healing. Isn't that nice? And the written words convey health. One of the things Phineas Quimby was able to do, remember he was the one who figured out that people's beliefs were what was helping them be sick, and so he'd walk them through and reason out how their beliefs were not working and they needed to get these other beliefs in their place. And he'd call on the Bible and he'd call on other things. But people would write to him and say, my wife has had this horrible problem all this time, can you help her please? Or, the wife would sometimes write. And so he would write a letter and he would say, imagine that I'm sitting here with you and I am telling you these words, and read these words 3 times or 5 times or 15, whatever it was that came through. And then he'd say, now feel da-da-da-da-da-da, and know that you are well. And then he'd sign it, words to that effect. And people would get well from the written word. All right? Amazing. Yeah? It wasn't necessary to be in his presence. So, okay, the apostle on the 8th lesson is love, is Philip. Philip is a Greek name. He's said to have spoken Greek so well he has no recorded Hebrew name, which is sometimes referred to as the Greek in various references. It means lover of horses, Philippi. Hippo is a horse, and philo is love. And the horse is a symbol for power, swiftness, and strength. The love is born of knowledge and understanding. And remember, you have to not understand something to know it and love it. So that's where it's coming together. As the mother knows the son is good regardless of what others may say, and in time is proven out. So with the love of Philip. He's the one who is said to have asked, can anything good have come out of Nazareth? And then to see immediately that when he meets Jesus, oh, now I understand. So, if a principle is clear to you and easily understood, stand by it and focus on it. Swiftness and strength are in its legs. So I like that one a lot. And the beatitude down there is, blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of their righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And this is very interesting because the early Christian martyrs who saw only good are said to have experienced the lions and spears as angels and flowers. Yeah, and people, so I think that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, don't you?
Yes.
Right. So that's the essence of lesson 8. We're going to start overlapping a little bit, or it turns out I could be here on September 19th.